Discovered my boyfriend or his sister pocketed £700 monthly meant for rent, so I'm kicking her out and reconsidering our relationship. I'm a 25-year-old woman, and I've been with my boyfriend, who's 27, for 3 years. Last year, he moved in with me, and for a while, everything felt perfect. Then, Christmas rolled around, and that's when his parents dropped the bomb. They were selling the family home, downsizing, and treating themselves to a 6-month cruise around the world. Honestly, good for them. Except for the minor detail that they have a younger daughter, Emma, who is 18. What I didn't know, because my boyfriend never told me, is that he had already promised his parents he'd let Emma move in with us until she left for university. The first I heard of it was after the fact, and it led to some major blowout arguments between us. I did not want Emma living in my house. Despite my protests, when the house sold in February, Emma turned up with her bags and moved in. Ever since, my life has been hellish. Our house technically has 3 bedrooms, but only one was a bedroom. One was my home office, and the other was our home gym. Emma immediately converted the gym into a room, which meant most of our equipment went straight into storage. She's changed the whole atmosphere in the house. She doesn't lift a finger to help, and she acts like she's exempt from all responsibilities. I put up with a million little things that drive me mad, but the real breaking point came last weekend. My boyfriend, the dogs, and I went away for a getaway. I was nervous about leaving Emma alone, but my boyfriend insisted it would be good for her to gain a little independence before university. Oh, how wrong he was. We got home Sunday evening, only to find the house trashed, a true disaster zone. Emma was dead asleep in her room, the stench of hangover thick in the air. I spent half the night cleaning, but it was so bad I still had to hire a professional cleaner to come in on Monday. I snapped. That was it for me. I thought I could endure Emma's presence until she left for university in September, but now she's talking about postponing her place for a year, maybe going traveling, maybe not, and using our house as her base. No. Just no. I want her out of my house, and I want it now. I get that her parents are still off on their cruise until the end of August, but I don't care. I'm done being the one who puts up with everything. When I told my boyfriend I'd had enough, he refused to budge. Emma's family, he said. He couldn't kick her out. But I own this house outright, no mortgage, it's in my name, all the bills are in my name except for the Sky TV, which he pays for. He sends me half the bills each month, but that's it. This is my home. Fed up, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I reached out to my boyfriend's parents by text, asking for a call as soon as possible. I also contacted Emma's older sister, hoping maybe she could take Emma in, though they don't get along and she has a 2-year-old, so my hopes weren't high. Then everything just exploded in my face in the most incredible way. First, thank you universe for finally opening my eyes. My boyfriend is absolutely not the person I want to spend my life with. The call with his parents was an utter shock. They told me they'd been sending Emma £700 every month to cover all her living expenses while staying with us. I had never seen a penny of it. When her mum casually mentioned I could take the cost of cleaning out of Emma's money, I literally had to ask what money she meant because Emma didn't have a job. Her mother started laughing and explained they'd been sending Emma £700 a month ever since she moved in. Their intention was for Emma to pass along this money to us to cover her share. Either Emma's been pocketing it, or my boyfriend's been lying and keeping it for himself. Both possibilities made me livid. Her parents were furious to hear I'd never seen a cent and immediately offered to transfer £4,200, the entire sum Emma was supposed to have paid us since February, straight to my personal account. I was blunt during that call. I cannot have Emma stay in my house any longer. Sure, maybe she'll go in September, but what if she decides to defer, or take a gap year? What if she stays longer? I will not tolerate another year of this. Her mum said she'd talk to Emma's sister about possibly taking her in until their return. And, for the record, when they're back from their cruise, they already have a house lined up. They will not be living with us. Tonight, I'm having a serious, final conversation with my boyfriend, and I'm now seriously rethinking this entire relationship. If he tries to fight me on Emma staying, it's over. I've been a doormat since Emma set foot in this house, and I should have charged my boyfriend rent, not just split bills, and I refuse to stand for it any longer. Update 1. I sat both my boyfriend, let's call him Tom for clarity, and Emma down last night and drew a clear line. I told them flat out, Emma had to go. I just couldn't tolerate her attitude and disrespect any longer. I'd reached my breaking point. For anyone wondering, Tom absolutely knew about the money. He wasn't keeping it himself, but he knew Emma was getting it. His brilliant idea was that giving her £700 a month, money she didn't lift a finger to earn, would somehow teach her about budgeting and responsibility. I told him outright that the evidence proved otherwise. If you hand an 18-year-old that much money with zero strings attached, she's going to lose her mind with it. If Tom honestly thought that would instill any kind of responsibility in her, then he was even dumber than I was for putting up with either of them. Emma, of course, tried to defend herself. She came out with how she thought living with me would be a chance for us to bond, that maybe I could become like another sister to her. I shot back, if this is how she treats her siblings, then it's no wonder her actual sister wants nothing to do with her. Maybe it was harsh, maybe it was mean, but it was fair. To be honest, when it comes to my relationship, I think I'm done. I told Tom I needed some space. I have to really reflect on this relationship, because this whole ordeal has completely shaken me to my core. Emma's going to stay with her aunt, and Tom is going with her. Their aunt is driving over tomorrow to pick up Emma and all her things, and Tom's tagging along to stay there for about a week. When he comes back, that's when we'll sit down and talk through everything properly. Because right now, I need distance, and a chance to breathe. Update 2. Tom and Emma have been gone for nearly a week, and finally, my house feels like my own again, just me and the dogs. The space has this unfamiliar quiet, and I find myself savoring every moment of it. I didn't hesitate to change the locks, yet again, just in case Tom tries to show up. Now, even if he comes back, his key won't work, and that gives me an enormous sense of relief. I know in my gut that I am completely done with this relationship. There's a finality in the air that wasn't there before, something inside me has shifted and clicked into place. Right now, all that's left is the last step. I need to meet Tom, somewhere neutral, just the two of us, and finally break things off. I want to look him in the eye, say what needs to be said, and close this chapter for good. Update 3. Emma and my boyfriend, let's call him Tom for now, both left last week to stay with their aunt. Emma is staying there until her parents return, while Tom planned to stay for just a week to give me some space. On Saturday evening, Tom came over so we could have a serious talk about our relationship and everything that had happened. By the end of that conversation, I broke up with him. The realization hit me hard that I'd let both him and his sister walk all over me for far too long. I'd always tried to be accommodating, always putting others first, but this time, enough was enough. Over the last few days, Tom has been coming and going, collecting the rest of his things. I think he's crashing at a friend's place while he searches for somewhere new to rent. Obviously, there's a sadness about it all. I genuinely thought Tom was the person I'd spend my whole life with, not just another chapter, but the whole book. But this whole mess made me realize I need to start putting myself first. For once, I'm allowing myself to be selfish, to choose my own peace of mind. As for Emma, her aunt put her on a strict curfew and there's a clear 3-strike policy in place. Money is being sent to the aunt to cover Emma's expenses, but, honestly, I just don't care anymore. Emma was never truly my responsibility, not really. She never should have been. That money Tom and Emma's parents sent me for looking after Emma? I divided it in two. First, I used what was necessary to cover all the expenses Emma racked up, including that never-ending cleaning bill. The rest? I booked myself into an amazing spa retreat. A few friends are joining me, and we're all counting down the days. My parents have kindly offered to take care of the dogs so I can really unwind. I've got a full-body massage lined up, and a champagne afternoon tea already reserved. After everything, I can hardly wait to finally take care of myself. Update 4. I drove straight there. The padlock wasn't the one I'd put on. They'd cut mine clean off and swapped it for a cheap one from the little vending rack by the counter. The manager pulled up the cameras and there she was, Emma, ponytail shoved through a baseball cap, dragging my weighted plates like she was competing in the world's least glamorous strongman, with some lanky boy I didn't recognize wrestling my smart bike into the boot of a battered hatchback. The timestamp was from a week ago. I could have bitten through my own tongue. I reported it immediately. The officer who came out was practical and kind in that bottom line way. It was theft. I had a police report and a crime number before it even pulled into my driveway. Then I texted Tom, because no one else knew the unit name or my access code. He lied at first, said he had no idea what I was on about, that surely I'd misplaced a literal squat rack, but when I sent him a photo still from the CCTV, he changed tack. He only gave Emma the code so she could grab a yoga mat. He didn't realize she'd taken anything else. I told him point blank that if I'd owned a yoga mat worth 1,200 pounds, I'd have kept it chained to the floor. I don't know if anger can be clean, but something inside me went very quiet. I emailed the storage company authorizing police access to the footage and I called Emma's mom on FaceTime. She answered on a deck somewhere that looked like a screensaver, straw hat perched just so. When I told her why I was calling, all the tan drained from her face. She said she'd transfer money to cover whatever was missing. I told her this wasn't about money. It's my house, my things, my name on the lease for that unit. Emma stole from me. Her mother hung up to call the aunt. 10 minutes later the aunt rang me, mortified, and told me she just found an envelope of cash and a folded-up bill of sale in Emma's bedside drawer that literally said, "Smart bike, 650 pounds, with a phone number." She sent me a photo of it. I passed everything to the officer. It took less than 24 hours for him to trace the buyer through the number. He bought the bike off a girl who said she was moving house. To his credit, once he found out it was stolen, he cooperated without a fuss. I didn't get the full 650 pounds back. Apparently he'd peeled off 200 pounds already to fix the pedal, but the police recovered the bike and 2 pairs of adjustable dumbbells from his garage and returned them to me. The rest, my barbell, the plates, resistance bands, even my bloody foam roller, are likely long gone. The officer told me to keep an eye on Facebook Marketplace. The sheer mundanity of being told to hunt for your own possessions online was almost funny. Before anyone asks, yes, I pressed charges. Stealing from my storage unit isn't teenage messiness, it's a crime. Tom tried to call me 7 times when he found out. On the 8th, I picked up, because I wanted to hear what sort of justification he'd reach for this time. He started with, "She panicked and thought she'd pay you back," moved to, "It was only the bike," and ended with, "You're really going to ruin her life over a mistake?" I told him Emma had ruined her own life the second she walked out of that unit with my property, and that if he'd had anything to do with it, he should probably stop talking. It got worse. A letter arrived for me the next day from a letting agent, all very polite and formal. Your guarantor application for Mr. Thomas, surname, and could I provide 3 months bank statements and proof of income by Friday? I hadn't agreed to be his guarantor. I hadn't even been asked. He'd simply put my name down and hoped I'd be too tired or too soft to fight it. I rang the agent and told them I had not and would not be guarantor, and that they were not to process anything with my details. I followed it up with an email and copied a screenshot of my last "we are broken up" text to him for good measure. Then I emailed Tom and told him if he tried to use my information for anything else, I'd go to a solicitor. He apologized with a long ramble about being desperate and thinking I'd understand because we'd built a life together. There's a strange dissonance in someone invoking our life together while I'm literally reacquainting myself with my own belongings. Emma has not called me. Her aunt did, again, to say she'd driven her straight to the police station herself and sat with her through the interview. She told me, in a low voice like she didn't want to commit the words to the air, that Emma had actually deferred her place at university in May. She hadn't told anyone. She'd intended to work on herself and travel, which, translated, apparently meant staying out all night and selling whatever she could get her hands on for cash. Her parents were flying back early. I heard the decision happen, in the aunt's kitchen, the brittle clink of a mug on a worktop, the way she said, "We'll get her before someone worse does." For the first time since February, I felt something like relief for them. The world will do what the world does. At least somebody her own family is holding her accountable now. I brought the bike back into the house myself. I set it up in the room that had been Emma's and then my gym, and tactically ignored the faint scuff marks her bed had gouged into the skirting. The dogs watched me with their heads on their paws like tiny judges. It was raining that soft, steady British drizzle, and the house smelt like wet fur and laundry detergent. I put on one of those chirpy instructors and pedaled until everything went jelly. After, I sat on the floor and let the quiet ring in my ears. There is a particular kind of happiness that has nothing to do with big gestures. It's your own key turning in your own door and knowing that, this time, it's really just you. The spa is still booked for this weekend. God knows I need it now more than before. My best friend messaged me that she'd bring a ridiculous face mask, and I'm only half exaggerating when I say I nearly cried. In the meantime, the room is mine again. I put my mat in the corner, hung a plant by the window, and left the blinds open so the afternoon light can do that honeyed thing across the floorboards. As for Tom, he sent one last text yesterday to say he'd be by on Thursday with a van and a friend to collect the rest of his things. I told him to send me a list and a time, and that I'd have it boxed on the drive. He replied with a single, "Thanks." When I put the boxes together in the hall, I found one small velvet ring box tucked behind a stack of old festival wristbands in his drawer. I didn't open it. I put it back where I found it, taped the box shut, and wrote his name on it in big block letters. There are 1,000 versions of the life you think you're living. This time, I'm grateful I get to choose mine. Update 5. Thursday came on with that flat, pewter sky that makes everything look like it's been run through a cold wash. I'd stacked his boxes on the drive before breakfast, labels in block capitals, the ring box taped into the corner of one with his old hoodies because I refused to be the one to handle it twice. The dogs arranged themselves at the window like two small, judgmental gargoyles. I made tea and stood in the kitchen with my hands wrapped around the mug until I could feel the heat in my bones. He was late. Of course he was. He pulled up in a hired transit with one balding tire and a friend I didn't recognize, the kind of lad who calls everyone mate whether it fits or not. I didn't go out. I watched them load in silence, the thunk of his life going into a van I didn't have to look at anymore. When the last box went in and his friend tactfully vanished into the cab to play on his phone, Tom knocked on the door. I opened it. He looked tired in a way that wasn't just sleep. There's a version of him I loved once, the one who could make me laugh when we missed our train and it was raining sideways, and I suppose for a second I saw the outline of that. He had a speech ready. You know when someone's rehearsed because the words roll out smooth and shiny, like they've been turned over in a pocket. We were good together. Family is messy. We can put this behind us. He said he'd been an idiot. He said he was sorry. He said it again in a smaller voice, as if maybe the size of the apology would make a difference. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out the velvet box. He didn't do the grand gesture you see in a cinema. It was smaller and worse. He actually sank to one knee on my front step, put a crease of damp through his jeans, and the ring sat there in its little nest, catching what little light the day had to give and flashing like a distress signal. My stomach did that falling lift thing. Somewhere in the road a gull ripped open a bin bag and a line of potato peel skittered down the pavement. The world, unbothered, continued. "No," I said, and the word came out clean, like I'd polished it. His face crumpled, smoothed, rearranged. He put the ring away without looking at it, stood up and hugged his elbows like he'd suddenly remembered it was cold. He tried one more time with, "We can fix it. I can fix it. I'll talk to the police. And I cut him off because I could taste the old softness creeping up my throat like damp, and I am so done with damp. It's not yours to talk to, I said. And it isn't mine to fix. He swallowed. For a heartbeat he looked like he might argue, or cry, or push past me and go aimlessly through rooms that weren't his anymore. He didn't. He nodded, once, and something left his face. He took the last box, the one with the ring, and carried it to the van. The dogs thumped their tails in the lifeless, diplomatic way dogs do when they sense a scene has ended. That night, the officer rang. He'd spoken to the CPS. Because Emma had admitted it, because she was 18 and this was her first offense, because the value sat in that messy bracket where the law shrugs and says maybe, they were offering a conditional caution if I agreed. Pay compensation. Letter of apology. Attend a restorative conversation if I was willing. He used those careful words you get with gentle bureaucracies that have seen all kinds of grief. I told him yes, on the condition there was no contact beyond what was arranged, and that if she breached anything, they did not fumble it a second time. They scheduled it for Monday, back room of the station with walls an unblinking shade of municipal magnolia and a vending machine that coughed lukewarm tea into cups with a limp flourish. I went in jeans and a jumper that still smelt faintly of the lavender oil from the spa I'd finally, gloriously made it to over the weekend. My friend slathered my face in that ridiculous gold mask between a hot stone massage and a nap so heavy I thought I'd been rebooted. For the first time in months I woke up without clenching my jaw. I held onto that feeling like a talisman and walked into the room. Emma was smaller than the last time I saw her, not in body so much as in bravado. No eyeliner flicks sharpened to a point, no high ponytail. Hair down, chewed sleeve, eyes darting everywhere but mine. The aunt sat to her left, a fixed point in a cardigan with baubles worn smooth by worry. And there were her parents, flown home early just as they'd said, their tans sitting strangely under strip lights, the cheerful crew sheen rubbed raw by fluorescent honesty. Her mum's laugh lines looked like they'd been sketched with a heavier hand. Her dad had a peeling sunburn at the bridge of his nose and kept removing and replacing his glasses, which felt like a metaphor so on the nose I nearly laughed. The facilitator did the calm, practice thing. Emma read, in a voice she barely had hold of, from a lined piece of paper. I'm sorry. I knew it wasn't mine. I didn't think. I don't know why I did it. I wanted money for. She trailed off, and the aunt put a hand very gently on the table like she was laying down a truth she'd held too long. For going out, she said. For whatever she thought would fill the bit that didn't feel full. I said my piece. I told Emma that she hadn't just taken a bike and dumbbells and a bar of metal and a foam roller, she'd taken the one place in this whole mess that had still felt like mine. I told her that she wasn't a tornado sweeping through other people's houses, she was a person making choices. I told her that I would not be her lesson, but I would be the line she bounced off and didn't cross, again. I kept my voice level because there is a particular power in not raising it when everything in you wants to scream. Her mum cried, the small, muffled kind that makes you want to hand over a tissue and a second chance. Her dad apologized in a quiet voice that made me want to forgive him, because it is possible to be a decent person and an absent parent at the same time, and that's a horrible thing to sit with. Emma said sorry again, and I believed that she believed it, even if believing it won't be enough on its own. They agreed to the conditions. Money was already sent to the officer's account to be transferred to me formally. The letter would be written again, this time without someone else's hand steadying the lines. No contact. Breach it and the caution goes. Everyone nodded like they were securing knots. On the way out, in the corridor that smelt of overbrewed coffee and disinfectant, her mum touched my arm. Thank you, she said, and for a second I saw the ghost of the version of all of this where we were swapping recipes and complaining about weather apps, and it knocked the wind out of me. I said, look after your daughter, and she nodded in that brittle way of people who are already moving mountains. I came home to a house that looked like it was exhaling. A new padlock on the storage unit glinted in my bag, the heavy-duty kind that looks like it could be used to anchor a boat. I took a photo of it on the kitchen counter next to the dog's biscuit tin and texted my dad, finally got the right one. He sent back a thumbs up and a badly framed picture of my mum trying to teach the older dog to do a high five, both of them very serious and very wrong. There were moments of absurdity threaded through the rest. On Saturday afternoon, mid-facial, my phone buzzed with a notification from Facebook Marketplace because of course I had set one up, new listing near you, weight plates, barely used. The photo was a grainy rectangle of something that could have been mine except for the dust pattern. I passed it on to the officer. He sent back, already on it. Maybe we'll recover a plate. Maybe we won't. The world is full of almosts. Tom hasn't called again. He did send an email with 2 lines to say he'd moved into a place in the next town, no guarantor needed, and that he was sorry for putting my name where it didn't belong. He finished with, I didn't know what else to do, which is at once the truth and the problem. I replied, do better, which is not profound but felt correct. The ring never came up. No accusatory text about it going missing, no plea to meet just to talk. It left with him in a box with festival wristbands and a decade of t-shirts with slogans on them. In the right light, that feels like cinema. In real life, it felt like closing a drawer and hearing the soft click of everything slotting into place. The spa was ridiculous in the best way. I lay in an outdoor hot tub while the rain made tiny dimples in the surface, and my friend told me about a man on the train reading a paperback and crying without wiping his eyes. We ate slightly stale macaron and pretended they weren't, and we laughed until my ribs ached, which I chose to count as exercise. I slept in a bed with sheets so crisp you could hear me turn over. I came home in the afternoon, did that honeyed thing across the floorboards, and I thought, yes. There's no neat bow. There never is. Emma has her conditions. I have my house. The plants in the gym room are already leaning into the window like tiny optimists. The dogs are asleep in 2 identical cinnamon rolls of fur at my feet. Somewhere in the next town, a man I almost married is hanging clothes in a wardrobe that doesn't smell like my detergent. Somewhere in a drawer, a ring waits to be someone else's problem or promise. Update 6. It started with a ping at 5:42 a.m., that weird hour where the world feels like it's been half unzipped and you can see the seams. New listing near you. Olympic barbell? Good Nick. The photo was a smear of dawn in a car park, the kind of grain where every gray looks like every other gray, but the knurling had that tiny patch of smooth where I'd sanded a burr, and there was a paint daub from when I misjudged a doorway and swore so loudly my neighbor's cat fled. I sent it to the officer. He replied, "Rugby club car boot. I'm headed that way." 10 minutes later I was tying my shoelace with one hand and clipping leads on the dogs with the other, because there's something about walking into a hopefully not confrontation that makes you want company that wags without asking questions. I dropped them with my parents on the way, my dad in slippers doing a little two-step of excitement at an early errand, my mum saying take a coat, like weather is something you can bargain with. The car boot was a field stamped into submission, the kind of mud that tries to keep your shoes as a souvenir. It smelled like bacon fat and wet cardboard and the strange chemical cheerfulness of those blue portable loos. Stalls wobbled in rows, someone's entire life spread out in plastic crates under a British flag canopy that had seen better jubilees. People were selling the idea that their junk could be your treasure, which is very on brand for a Saturday. The barbell lay across 2 wallpapering tables like a steel spine. The man behind it had the look of someone who'd long ago made peace with cold mornings, beanie, red hands, a thermos cup with a lid that had lost its click. I walked up and the air went thin with how fast my heart was going. He clocked me clocking it, did that theatrical nonchalance of merchants everywhere. "Good bar. Solid," he said, as if I were there to buy a philosophy. I touched the smooth patch. My thumb fitted the memory of it. I said, "That's mine." He did a little shrug. "Came off a lad. Cash. Don't know nothing." The officer arrived with that steadying presence he carried like an extra layer. He introduced himself, said the right words, showed the right ID. The seller blew out his cheeks and gestured at a tarp with a few plates arranged like sad grey pizza. "Take it then," he said, deeply aggrieved at the inconvenience of honesty. We did. The bar, 4 plates, a tricep rope I hadn't realized I missed, and a resistance band that snapped my wrist on the way to the car because humiliation loves a moment. On the walk back we passed a stall selling baby clothes so small they felt like lies and another with a box of paperbacks all sun faded to the same pink. A girl of about 10 was dragging a weight plate along the ground like a Viking shield. Her dad said, "Put that down," with the resigned authority of someone who has been out-negotiated by a child daily. The surrealism of reclaiming pieces of your life between a stack of Mills and Boone and a man hawking 3 for a $5 screwdrivers nearly tipped me into laughter. At home, I lined the barbell up on the mat like it was a spine I could slot back into myself, and the house said yes, more of this. I texted the officer a thank you with 3 photographs for his evidence stash, the sanded knurl, the paint scuff, a shot of my very serious face next to my very serious dog, who apparently believes personal property crimes are best met with a mild nap. Then the letter came, not the apology one, that turned up later, in a brown envelope that made the words inside look naked, but a white windowed rectangle with my name spelt perfectly and my stomach dropping before I'd even opened it. "We have received an application for a mobile phone account using your details," it said, all clean lines and suspicion. I rang, heart banging, and went through the theater of security questions that always make me feel like I'm trying to remember my own name under bright lights. I told them it wasn't me. They told me they had flagged it. I hung up and did the sensible adult thing of making a cup of tea, then the slightly less sensible adult thing of Googling how to put a marker on my file. It was oddly calming, paying 20-odd quid to officially announce to the world that I was not, in fact, applying for anything in anyone else's name. It felt like changing another lock, only I couldn't see the door. At noon the officer's email pinged in with the apology attached, scanned and formal. Her handwriting looked younger than 18. There were hearts over the eyes, which hit me in a place I didn't know was available for hitting. She apologized in looping loops. She said she didn't think. She wrote that she wasn't asking for forgiveness. I read it twice and put it in a folder with the crime number and the receipts from the storage unit, and then, because I am not a saint, I went into the gym room and did 10 slow squats and thought about the way choices land. In the afternoon, the dog staged a coup at the back door because a fox had taken off with a packet of Monster Munch and was parading it along the fence like it had acquired a relic. I watched it with the same bemused respect I have for anyone who thrives audaciously. The sky did that sulky, pewter thing again and then, click, opened up to a thin strip of unlikely blue. The house, as ever, kept breathing. On Sunday, My dad came with a drill that had a battery that could probably power a small village and a tote bag of fittings that looked like jewelry for houses. We went to the storage unit together, even though I didn't need 2 sets of hands to fit the new lock. He has a reverence for doing a job once and doing it right that borders on religion. He stood with his foot braced against the concrete, drilled into metal with the focus of a man for whom redemption looks like a well-seated bolt. A father doing practical things to make his child safe is a cliché for a reason. On the way back we stopped at the Chippy. We stood outside under the awning while the rain stitched the air and ate chips so hot they hurt, blowing and swearing around the same mouthful because we never learn. My dad told me a story about the time he applied to be a postman because he thought it would be romantic to deliver letters at dawn, and how my mom had said, "You're allergic to mornings," and how he'd argued for an entire week and then slept through the alarm for the interview. We laughed until we cried, which looked like crying until we laughed, and something unknotted itself in my chest. On Monday, because the universe likes to pile its admin together, the officer called to say they'd traced 2 more items through Marketplace and would I be willing to accompany for identification if needed. We met outside a semi with a pebble-dash facade, the seller a woman in a dressing gown with a toddler on her hip and that brittle, wired energy that says you've been up all night with a small human whose needs are incomprehensible. She had my foam roller, a reunion so absurdly minor it tipped me back into gratitude, and a pair of resistance bands in a drawer by the back door for exercises, she said, as if they'd wandered into her house and joined the family. I didn't know, she insisted, and maybe she didn't. The officer did his calm thing. I left with the foam roller under my arm like an honest man's baguette and the toddler waved at me like I'd done a magic trick. That afternoon, because comedy will not be defeated, the letting agent from before rang me to confirm your attendance at the tenancy check-in for Thomas, and I had the strange pleasure of saying, "No," and remove my number from every file you own. There was a silence where I could hear the hum of their office lights through the phone line. "Of course," she said, finally, in a tone that suggested this was not the strangest thing that had happened to her that day. And then, as if this story needed one more hard left, I saw Emma on Wednesday. Not in a way that broke the no contact, in a way that made the no contact feel like a mercy. I was coming out of the supermarket with a bag of oranges and an entirely unnecessary plant, and there she was across the street in a cafe window, in a black apron, carrying a tray with both hands like it was a table delicate as glass. She turned her head and for a flicker we caught each other, 2 women on either side of different panes. She didn't wave. I didn't, either. She looked back down and made sure not to spill a single thing. It is possible to inventory someone's small effort from 20 feet away and decide that is enough of a moment. The house is settling into itself like a cat into a sun patch. The gym room smells faintly of rubber and soil and whatever they put on new plants to make you believe you'll keep them alive. The barbell sits along the rack, a long, ordinary, necessary line. The dogs are learning that I am the kind of person who will throw a tennis ball 4 times and then pretend not to see it under the sofa the 5th. There's a life happening here that has nothing to do with anyone else's emergency. There's a fox with gaudy crisps and a car boot with a bacon van and my dad fitting bolts like blessings. Somewhere not far away, a girl with a chewed sleeve is carrying coffee without slopping a drop. Somewhere else, a man is figuring out how to hang his shirts in a wardrobe that doesn't smell like my detergent. The ring is conspicuous by its absence in the best possible way. It exists in a universe where it is not my problem. The light has started to do that late summer gold again in the evenings, and when it hits the floorboards just so, I understand in my bones that enough can be its own kind of beautiful.